kind of Star Wars fan that generally likes all Star Wars content. However, the Clone Wars has a special place in my heart, and it's one of my favorite things about Star Wars. Earlier this year, in anticipation for the Bad Batch, I decided that it's time for a full rewatch, and this time in chronological order. I'll quickly say something about the rating. I'll give each episode a number of gonks out of 10 gonks. And this is what the different numbers mean. I've decided to go with a system like this because it enables me to distinguish between okay and good and fantastic episodes. I have to keep the comments for each episode quite brief because this video will be long as it is, but hopefully I'll get said the most important things. Let's get started. This is a decent start to the series. It showcases Anakin's and Obi-Wan's relationship in a fun way, and also Trench is pretty cool. Solid 5 out of 10. I think special, but a good way to kick off the series. I like this episode a lot because it introduces us to the clones and some of their values like brotherhood. Also seeing more of Rex and Cody is always great. It's pretty average, but it's still a good episode, and it kind of reminds me of Among Us. 5 out of 10. And this is such an important part because first of all, well, it's the introduction to Ahsoka, but also watching this now just really highlights her development through this series. Then we also get introduced to the Twilight, and I had completely forgot about the existence of that ship. And I kind of really like this film. It's not awesome, but I still find it pretty entertaining. And the plot is actually pretty interesting. I just feel like it's not as bad as people make it out to be. I had a great time watching it, to be honest. You can clearly see that it's built as if it was 3 episodes. Some parts are better than others, but overall it makes a decent enough story. 7 out of 10. This episode is all about one of the most important things in this entire show, which is the clones themselves. It's pretty nice to get insight into how the clones are trained, but at the same time it's not really a crucial episode in any way. It's just good to watch for context in future episodes regarding the Domino Squad 99 and the importance of Kamino. 4 out of 10. This is a politics-centered episode, though it's a pretty boring one, and Jar Jar doesn't make it any better. It is cool to see more of Bail Organa and see kind of where Leia got her skills. It is a pretty forgettable episode though. I wrote the review on it the day after I watched it and I had trouble remembering what even happened. On a side note, Clone Captain Keely was in this one, and he looks so cool. Like, his armor paint is probably one of my favorite armor paints. 2 out of 10. This is the first ever episode, and this is the first episode I saw back in the day, and I was so confused when I watched this the first time. I was just like, have I missed something? Like, is this how it starts? The concept itself is pretty cool, but just somehow wasn't executed in a way that would keep me invested. 4 out of 10. This is the first episode of the Malevolence arc, which overall is alright. This first episode is the most boring out of them. It is however cool to see more of Plo Koon and Ahsoka and Anakin, but it's an average episode at best. 3 out of 10. It starts to get a bit more interesting, but again I didn't really remember what happened in it. Even though I wrote the review the day after, I just remember that I was entertained by it. That said, it definitely wasn't a standout episode, but I liked the portrayal of Grievous. I find his character to be quite enjoyable in Clone Wars, which I don't remember being the case the first time I saw the series. 6 out of 10. For some reason I remember that Jar Jar would have been in this episode and was not looking forward to it, but luckily he is not in this episode, and I was really surprised of how much I really liked this episode. I loved seeing the interior of the Malevolence, and also we get to see how Anakin gets when Padme is in danger. It was just an overall great episode. 8 out of 10. This is the follow-up episode for Cadets. It's solid for being a one-off episode, and it's featuring some of my favorite clones. It also gives us a bit more insight into how the Republic operates, which I find to be very interesting. Even though it was entertaining, it's not one that I'll be coming back to anytime soon. And also it's so hard to know who is who from the shinies. 5 out of 10. Again, we get to see Anakin's attachment to things. In this case it's R2. I did not remember how infuriating Goldie is. This episode also includes some fart jokes, or if you can even call them that, which just felt very out of place. 4 out of 10. I did not have any recollection of this episode whatsoever, And considering the low rating I gave the previous episode, I didn't have any high hopes for this one. But this ended up being another episode that really surprised me positively. The reveal about Goldie was unexpected, and there was action, emotion, suspense, and many of my favorite Clone Wars characters, so yes, I really enjoyed this one. You also get to see the brutality of Grievous a little bit. He just brutally stabbed the fart guy. 8 out of 10. Another Jar Jar episode, and honestly I don't hate Jar Jar, but I don't like him either. This episode wasn't as bad as I feared it would be, but it's still your average Jar Jar shenanigans. And it just left me wondering why, for the love of Gonk, they let him go on missions. His convenient clumsiness is the one thing that really annoys me with his character. But Padme and C-3PO make this episode at least watchable, and Rhodia is a pretty cool planet. 3 out of 10. I only vaguely remember this episode, but I did remember the twist with the captain, so that affected my viewing a little bit. But again, I was really positively surprised with this episode. Ahsoka is always a delight, and Luminara was actually pretty cool as well. And of course, Asajj is always cool. 7 out of 10. Something about this episode is really good. Kit Fisto is pretty cool of course, but so is Grievous. Seeing his lair is so interesting, and that alone makes the episode worth watching. Even though this might not be considered as that important in the grand scheme of things, it shows Grievous' personality quite well, and the fact that he can be very intimidating. He also feels very frustrated with life, and that's a bit too relatable. 7 out of 10. This is our introduction to Hondo. The first time watching the Clone Wars, I actually really disliked Hondo, but now I've come to understand his character better, and I find him very amusing and fun to watch. This episode in particular wasn't anything special in my opinion, but it was interesting to see more of Florum and the pirates, and the Obi-Wan Anakin duo is always fun to follow, and seeing them interact with Dooku was great. 6 out of 10. This could have been way better if Jar Jar wasn't involved. He's not that bad in this episode, but it just makes me so mad that that senator had to die because dumbass Jar Jar couldn't secure himself in a seat. Otherwise, it's an alright episode. Hondo again is really the highlight of the episode. 5 out of 10. This episode could have easily been boring, but it really wasn't. Anakin's willingness to sacrifice himself was kind of surprising to see for some reason. And again, Ahsoka is always great. The idea of the episode can sound very boring, but it's carried out so well. 7 out of 10. There is not much to say about this episode, to be honest. I found it to be quite good for many similar reasons as the previous episode. This one had a bit more action though, and the idea was maybe a bit more interesting from the beginning. What you can take from this episode that some of the seppies are just total scum. 7 out of 10. This episode has some pretty important lessons. The Tolls just look so strange, but they're really good warriors. They're kind of like winter Wookiees. And Chicho was so infuriating. I just wanted to hit him, and it was just so sad to see the Tolls and the clones die for nothing basically, but that was kind of the point of the episode, so 4 out of 10. I guess this is a suitable episode to watch in these times of a pandemic. First of all, Peppy Bao is great. Also, have you noticed that the end of her staff looks pretty much exactly like the end of Mando's rifle? A lot happens in this episode, but it doesn't feel rushed at all. It's definitely a great episode. 8 out of 10. This episode was great. We get to see a new cool planet, and also again see Anakin wearing his emotions on his sleeve. Seeing the Angels of Iego was really cool, and kind of an Easter egg in a way, since they were referred to in The Phantom Menace. Again, Jar Jar was slightly infuriating when Padme could have died because of his clumsiness again. 7 out of 10. I really like this episode a lot. We get to see Ahsoka's first time in command. It's crazy how she gets so much responsibility at such a young age. It was also really great to see that they in combat utilized the fact that there is no right or wrong way in space. That's not something we see in Star Wars a lot, so that was appreciated. 8 out of 10. I really like this one because of Numa and Waxer and Boyle. I I really enjoy watching their connection and how the two clones are very different, and it just highlighted the clones' differences and individuality. It's a good episode. We get to see more of the surface of Ryloth and more of the Twi'leks. It also has some nice connections to Rebels, which is great. 6 out of 10. This episode connects really well to Rebels because of the introduction of Cham Syndulla. It's a very action-filled episode, but it still has a lot of value and it's very entertaining to watch. Seeing more of Mace is also great. This whole Ryloth arc is pretty great, and I love how it shows the different stages of the battle. 6 out of 10. This episode is a pretty good introduction to Cad Bane. It shows how capable he is. I mean, stealing a holocron from the Jedi Temple is no easy task. We also get to see more of the Jedi Temple and what it looks like actually, and that's really cool to see. Other than that, it's an entertaining episode, but it's nothing special really. 5 out of 10. I had completely forgotten about this one too. It's my favorite from this arc. It really shows how cunning and ruthless Cad Bane is. Again, it also helps with Ahsoka's character development and shows more of Anakin's tactics and his character basically. The no gravity fight scene is really cool for some reason, and Bane single-handedly controlling the ship is also a very interesting concept. 8 out of 10. I was so scared for the kids' safety. I wasn't sure if they were going to make it. Killing babies might have been a bit too brutal even for the Clone Wars, but what do I know, there's some pretty rough stuff in this series. The Jedi being able to just know exactly where the babies would be taken seemed like a bit of an OP power, but it's alright. It's also interesting to see that already at this point Palpatine was preparing for the time after Order 66. 5 out of 10. This was a surprisingly good one again. I loved seeing the farmers' living conditions and basically just how they lived. I also really liked the designs of the bounty hunters. At the same time, the episode wasn't like standout or anything, but it had many enjoyable qualities. 5 out of 10. The Zillo Beast episodes are just sad. I didn't want to watch them again because I remembered feeling just very sad about everything that happens basically. This episode also shows that Mace Windu isn't completely heartless, but it's not the most interesting episode. It did have some really cool visuals though. 3 out of 10. It's just beyond me how stupid it was to take the Zillo Beast to Coruscant of all places. I'm also not a fan of monster films in general, but if you are, you might like this episode a lot. This just wasn't an enjoyable episode at all for me. I don't like seeing things and houses being destroyed by giant monsters, so 3 out of 10. I had, again, absolutely no recollection of this episode and I was very positively surprised. It's so fun finding this episode that you don't remember. It's like getting to watch a completely new episode. And it was kind of a different episode, but still very good. It's fun to see more of Anakin and Padme's relationship. It also made me look forward to the upcoming Chloe's episodes. 5 out of 10. That continuous shot of Anakin and some clones running through the shield was fantastic, and it reminded me of the 2003 Clone Wars. We get to see more from Ki-Adi-Mundi, which is great. At least he was in on the game of kill count, which was honestly a pretty fun moment. I also loved the callback to the first assault on Geonosis from Attack of the Clones. 6 out of 10. This is a quite similar episode to the previous one, but this episode highlights Anakin's and Ahsoka's master and apprentice relationship by comparing it to Luminara and Barris's relationship. To me, that's probably the most interesting part about this episode. It was also interesting to see how easily Ahsoka and Barris were ready to sacrifice themselves. And again, there were some fun callbacks to Attack of the Clones. 6 out of 10. This is one of those episodes that I was really not looking forward to. I'm not a fan of anything horror at all, even if it is Star Wars. This one was not as bad as I remembered, but it's still not an episode that I will be rewatching anytime soon. Obi-Wan's calmness about the situation was quite funny. Even though I disliked this episode, I can't say it's bad, it's really not for me. 3 out of 10. So this is the one that I really don't like. It wasn't nearly as bad as I remembered either, but still not a fan of this one. I guess the mind control is a really interesting idea, and it, again, definitely wasn't a bad episode at all. It's just just not for me. Seeing Barry's attack Ahsoka had new weight now after knowing what eventually will happen to Barris. 3 out of 10. Another episode I had no recollection of, but nonetheless it was a very enjoyable one. I still think that Grievous is a very special villain, and I'm really starting to appreciate him more and more. Also really liked seeing more of Eat Cos and Adi Gallia. This was a surprisingly good episode and very entertaining. 5 out of 10. This episode really focused on the clones again and what their lives really are like and what kind of problems and issues they face in their lives. And it also raises several moral questions. Clones are such a big part of this era, and the Clone Wars is very successful in showing the different personalities and the different individuals and showing how human these clones are, which is something the prequels are not concerned with. And even though you won't miss much if you skip this episode, it has very important themes and I personally really like it. 6 out of 10. It's a bit hard to define which episodes are fillers in the Clone Wars, but this is one that can be really easily categorized as a filler. It's basically all about Sinubi? I don't know how to say his name. Anyway, it's about him teaching Ahsoka patience. Again, I had no recollection of this episode, but it's definitely very fun. I also really like that it shows more of Coruscant, and Ahsoka is always great. 6 out of 10. Now we're getting into some of those really good stories. I suppose this arc is good because it gives a backstory to the events later on, but it's pretty good on its own too. Since the Mandalorians are one of my absolute favorite things about Star Wars, I really like all episodes about Mandalore. I also really love the look of Sundari, which is the capital city. 7 out of 10. This episode is pretty important since it gives a backstory about Obi-Wan and Satine. There are many really good moments in this episode, and honestly Obi-Wan and Satine are such a good pair. And I would also argue that it's pretty important to have watched this episode just for like the context in the future Mandalore episodes. It's also pretty important in understanding Obi-Wan's character. 7 out of 10. For some reason I really like this episode. I'm unsure of exactly what it is. Maybe it's seeing Palpatine not succeeding for once, or just getting to follow as Satine is trying to investigate and find out the truth. I feel like a lot happens in this episode, and yeah, it's just really fun to watch. 8 out of 10. It was so good to see clone cadets, and well, Boba too of course. And even though I really enjoyed this episode, this whole arc just isn't very crucial in any sort of way, and I wouldn't feel too bad about skipping it unless you're a big Boba fan. 5 out of 10. Similar feelings with this one as the previous episode. It's a very suspenseful episode, even if you already know how it's going to end. That's something the series manages to do over and over, making suspenseful episodes with characters like Anakin, who we know that is going to survive for sure. 4 out of 10. This episode was great. The 2 previous ones of this arc were decent, so I didn't expect this one to be a lot better than that. More things happened in this episode, and there were a lot of interesting situations. And the duo of Plo Koon and Ahsoka is always great. And it was really great to see Bosk too. 7 out of 10. As I said earlier, Mandalore is my absolute favorite thing, and I've seen this episode multiple times. The plot is good, and even though not a lot happens, it ends up being entertaining all the way through. Also seeing Padme's and Satine's friendship is really great. 6 out of 10. This was my favorite episode so far. I've seen it multiple times, but it continues to be entertaining, and I wasn't even ready for everything that happened. I don't know how bad my memory is, but I didn't remember that this was the episode when Olmec got found out. And having a Mandalore episode with Ahsoka as one of the main characters is perfect. 9 out of 10. Really liked seeing more of Alderaan. That's something we really don't have in Star Wars canon that much. Otherwise, it's a pretty average episode, and it's quite important I think for Ahsoka's growth again. It also shows how different her approach is to seeing visions of Padme dying compared to Anakin in Revenge of the Sith. 5 out of 10. I didn't remember that the entire attack on Kamino happened in one episode only. This was a pretty fun episode to watch, mostly because of Battlefront. I'm very familiar with what happens in this battle and what the environment looks like. Then of course seeing more of Echo and Fives is always great. And then we have 99 sacrificing himself for absolutely nothing, which was just very sad. 6 out of 10. Another good episode, very much not crucial in any way, but I certainly liked it a lot. Again, it features Ahsoka, but the Pantorans were really great as well. What also probably improved my rating was that I didn't remember how it was going to end, so that really added to the surprise elements and suspense of the episode. 7 out of 10. This is one of the more boring fillers. I did appreciate again seeing more of Coruscant, but that's really the only value I found in this episode. I would not feel bad about skipping this one, unless you are a huge C-3PO or R2 fan, but like 2 out of 10. I was honestly not looking forward to this episode. For some reason I watched it quite recently and I didn't remember it being all too exciting. I was wrong, it ended up being an alright episode. This wasn't the most interesting episode, but it was still entertaining enough and I had a good time watching it. 5 out of 10. I've seen a lot of people really dislike Ziro episodes and I honestly don't mind them. Also, seeing Quinlan was great. I think we need to see more of him in Star Wars canon. Cad Bane being able to hold his own against both Quinlan and Obi-Wan really shows how skilled he really is. Oh, and one more thing. Nal Hutta is not a planet I would ever want to visit. 5 out of 10. This is one of the very few times that we get to see more of the normal separatists, as in not the military leaders. Also, I do quite like Lex Monteri and his arc in the series. And it's so weird seeing him in this episode because he changes so much throughout the Clone Wars. 7 out of 10. I had no recollection of this episode again. It's very much a political episode, but it's a great one at that. It really shows Padme's strength and courage, and she probably takes the price of most assassination attempts ever. It feels like every other episode someone's trying to kill her. But there is a real reason for that for sure. She is very powerful. And Padme has so many great moments in the Clone Wars, and this one is definitely one of the best ones. This episode also is great in that it shows how the war affects the citizens of the Republic. 8 out of 10. Remembering who the murderer was did make this episode less interesting than what it could have been, but even though I didn't know how it was going to eventually end, it was surprisingly good. It has the same strong points as the previous episode. But something I haven't mentioned is that Bail Organa is great too. I feel like he's pretty underrated and these episodes are pretty good representations of his character. 7 out of 10. A lot of people really like the Dathomir episodes. I'm not a huge fan of Dathomir as a whole, I just don't like the creepiness of it. For example, the Dathomir map in Fallen Order was horrible. I had so much trouble getting through that. I'm also not at all into the zombie and witch stuff, but I still think it's a pretty good addition to the Star Wars universe because a lot of other people like it. That said, this episode was pretty good. Actually, really good. Not only did we get a backstory for Ventress, but this is also a very crucial moment in her character arc. 8 out of 10. This for sure is a great episode, but I really don't like watching it because of how bad I feel for Savage. I also don't get the logic why they offered all their strongest men to Asajj for her just to take one of them and kill the rest. It's just a big why moment. This episode is also a prime example of how brutal and violent this show is at times. 7 out of 10. This was again a great episode. I like how I started off this arc with saying that I don't like Dathomir, but I've ended up liking all of the episodes so far. And again, I didn't remember this one at all, so it was a positive surprise. There were some things that I still don't really understand with this episode. Most notably, what was the reason for Savage to turn against Ventress and think that she betrayed him? Maybe I'm just dumb, but that just wasn't really clear to me. 8 out of 10. What I remember from watching this arc was that I was very conflicted and also that I was relieved when it was finally over. This time I was hoping that I'll maybe have a better time watching it. And this episode was kind of cool. I'm still not sure exactly what I feel about it, but it's definitely a well done episode. The visuals are amazing and the score is too. 8 out of 10. So the first episode of the Mortis arc was great, but I kind of think that it should have ended there. That might be what bugs me with this arc. It just kind of goes on for too long and it just feels like there's too much at stake and that Obi-Wan, Anakin and Ahsoka shouldn't be there. But at the same time, I don't want to give it a low rating. It's not bad at all. I'm just still very conflicted on my own feelings about the episode. 5 out of 10. After watching this one, I was still very conflicted, and well, I still am. It's just all so different from anything else in the show. Maybe too different for some people, but after watching Rebels, the Mortis arc was much easier to watch. It just didn't feel as overwhelming. I know that this arc is usually very polarizing, either people hate it or they love it, but I'm honestly somewhere in the middle, maybe a bit more on the positive side. The Mortis arc and just the wielders of the Force is something I'll have to revisit in the future, and maybe we'll see them in some future stories as well. 5 out of 10. Ah yes, the Citadel, this is one of my favorite arcs. We have great characters and a great plot, and there's so much to like in this episode. It's great to see how Ahsoka takes impressions from her master, and the concept of the Citadel itself is very interesting as well. It's also great to see Tarkin at this point in time. 8 out of 10. There are again many great moments, and this episode, and I guess this whole arc, is pretty dark. Not as dark as the other things, but it's heavier than a lot of the things from before. The dark visuals also contribute to that, of course. Also, something I noticed that this is the only arc so far that has left us with proper cliffhangers. Previously there's been a bit more of a solution or just a more peaceful moment to break off the episode. 8 out of 10. I really liked Piel, so it was really sad seeing him go. But there are some really great fight scenes in this episode, and the cinematography is so good. Tarkin's and Anakin's interactions were a much welcome addition. As I already said, this arc is one of my favorites. It's just great all the way through. 8 out of 10. I absolutely love these episodes. The battle scene from Fallujah is great, and the rest is even better. This episode, just like the Citadel arc, has stunning visuals. The use of light is just phenomenal. These two episodes are some of my absolute favorite episodes of the entire Clone Wars. There's just so much emotion and a feeling of true helplessness, and seeing Ahsoka being able to rise to the challenge is just so fantastic. The concept is fantastic, the music is flawless, and it looks absolutely beautiful. It's an easy 10 out of 10. I preferred the previous one over this one, but it's nearly as good. It has an emotional ending, and once again the visuals are amazing, and so is the soundtrack. This time there are cues from the Force themes, and it is so beautiful. The point being, this is absolutely a 10 out of 10. Let me know in the comments what you think about these two episodes. I want to know if others like them as much as I do, or if it's just me. And honestly, Ahsoka surviving this should have been her trial. She should have been knighted after this. Of course, that can't happen because of how the show is supposed to go, but this is one moment that definitely could have been her trials. That was a good note to leave it on, and we are now right in the middle of the series.